2005. So I've been polishing for about 14 years. To segue off what Dave just said, the reason why I'm here today, it's not to sell you diamonds, it's not to sell you equipment, it's to talk about surface refinement for polished concrete and polished concrete toppings. And one of the things that was just said is a lot of the Starbucks and the school districts and the Amazons they understand what bad polished concrete looks like after a year. We're going to talk about why is it bad polished concrete and what can be done differently so that we can promote the betterment of the industry. So my presentation is about education. That's really what it comes down to. So I wanted to start with kind of the state of the industry right now and why we have poor outcomes when it comes to polished concrete. So one of the things I wanted to focus on is the standard 03500 specifications that are very common for schools. We see them day in and day out. They focus on using a traditional 60-degree gloss measurement to basically quantify the outcome. The problem with this is it creates ambiguity in the end because you can manipulate a 60-degree gloss reading very easily. Gloss exclusively cannot measure surface refinement, haze value, or DOI, and I'm going to use some terms initially that I'll get into at the end so you guys know what I'm talking about. Gloss is commonly manipulated using topical guard sealer products leading to rapid floor deterioration. I'm not here to not guard. I'm here to talk about why guard is good and how it's misused to make floors look shiny when in fact they aren't. And then the processes can be varied. You have a varied outcome depending on contractors, equipment, diamond tooling, which leaves the burden on the owners to accept poor or substandard results. And that's kind of, again, what Dave's talked about is floor looked good when we started. It's a year old. Now it doesn't look good anymore. What happened? What's the why behind these results? So what I'm going to also talk about is I'm going to talk about measurable outcomes, allowing contractors flexibility in their process, something that cannot be manipulated with topical guard or sealers. We're going to talk about using RA, roughness average, to allow installers to understand what stage of the process they're in. We're going to talk about DOI, distinction of image, which is a measurement that ensures the floor is refined to a defined outcome. And then we're going to talk about haze, low haze values, which ensure that the surface is free from small inclusions, imperfections that break down over time with dirt and wear. So again, I'm not here to sell diamonds, grinders, vacuums, any of that. I'm here to educate everyone here so that everyone understands that in order for any of the products, whether it's Euclid's polished topping or it's a brand new slab, what polished concrete is and what it isn't. More or less where everyone starts with. So everyone starts with a recipe for a cake. This recipe for this cake doesn't tell me what the cake should taste like after I baked it. So I've got a process, the process here, using Sace diamonds and equipment, using Husqvarna diamonds and equipment. This is for their Euclid's polished topping. Over here, this is a process that we've come up with. These are diamond tooling that I sell and distribute at Jon-Don, both of which are giving a contractor an ABC process to produce an outcome, but we don't know what that outcome is actually supposed to be. Make the floor look shiny is generally the outcome that the owner's expecting, but what does that actually mean? I don't know, because all you're telling me is to go over the floor 4 times and then transition to this step. I don't understand, so I'm just gonna keep going through your process that you told me to do, and then when the floor doesn't look the way like it's supposed to, well, I'm just gonna blame the product, or I'm gonna blame the floor. I'm gonna pass the blame because you told me how I was supposed to do it. So again, what I'm focusing on is understanding why we're making these decisions on the diamond tooling and the processing versus follow these steps, because no steps that you can illustrate will give you the same outcome every single time. And those of us who have been doing concrete a long time, we know that to be gospel, because it never is the same anytime we jump to a floor. So what you see isn't always what you get. So time and time again, I look at floors that are a year old, 2 years old. They've got wear patterns, they're not shiny, the edges are shiny, but the feel of the floor isn't shiny. So I made a correlation, and this is really what I think makes sense and kind of paints the picture of what refinement really is. Surfaces that are highly refined and have low haze values are often ones used in applications where easy cleaning and high wear is critical. Your kitchen sink, the screen on your cell phone, the glass in your car or your home. Refinement is the key to producing the longest lasting surfaces, period. By simply making something look shiny to the naked eye, or by adding a weak or easily worn off coating, what you see isn't what you get. And this is really important, guys, because I've had conversations with many of you over years, and being in this industry for a long time, the assumption, and I've heard people say, I know guys that'll grind the floor once and put a sealer on and call it polished concrete. That's not polished concrete. That's concrete that's got a coating on it. When you coat concrete with layer after layer of guard or sealer, you actually have sealed concrete. You don't have polished concrete. Polished concrete is concrete that is highly refined and might have a stain protectant, but the wear surface is in fact the concrete. It's very important to note and understand that. So what the heck is DOI and what is haze, and why is this important for everyone here, and why is this the basis for this presentation? The reason why it's important is because the industry is craving this. It's been craving this for a long time. We've been in the Wild West for far too long, and there's far too many owners very, very high up on the pay scale who are pissed off that their floors look like shit after a very short amount of time. So the industry's been really asking for a guide. I used the analogy earlier about if you had plumbing done in your house and you really liked the plumber and he was a nice guy and he gave you a good price, would you trust him that he did a good job with your plumbing? No, you would have an inspector come in and pressure test the pipes, because what happens if you made a mistake and your house floods a couple months later? So we're like the one industry where if I give you a result and it looks the way that I told you it was supposed to be, then we just take it at face value without truly understanding what else is going on. So haze and DOI. DOI, distinction of image, again, it's a value that is measured using a concrete clarity meter. God damn it, I left it inside. But we'll look at it when we go inside. It's basically it's a high-tech measurement tool that was designed for measuring surface refinement, surface irregularities. There's a lot of different data points that is way better than a traditional gloss reading. So haze is a measurement of the small surface imperfections and irregularities that take away from the appearance and are the little potholes that in time break down the surface from dirt and wear. DOI goes beyond gloss to give a measurable outcome of the overall smoothness, refinement of the polished concrete in this case. DOI takes the ambiguity out of and variables out of standard ABC specifications and eliminates manufacturer bias or exclusivity. So again, having been in this industry for a long time, I've looked at countless specs that says you have to be certified in this system, you have to use this process, you could only do this if you pay this much money to this organization. And I'm here to tell you, I sell a lot of stuff, and that philosophy is complete BS. And it's what's driven us to where we're at today, because everybody wants to create a segue so that they can market themselves a certain way. I'm here to promote the betterment of our industry, because I know and I'm passionate about this, that polished concrete done right, it's beautiful and it's a very long lasting, and it is the most sustainable floor option out there. Common issues that DOI and haze readings detect and address the ABC gloss and ABC specs don't: surface pitting, crazing, other surface imperfections, surface scratching. How many of us have had scratches on our floors and we're just like, put some guard on it, it's fine, not a big deal. We've all been there. So what you'll notice is this chart over here, and it's a Concrete Polishing Council polished concrete appearance chart, level 1, 2, 3, flat, satin, polished, highly polished, the description of those, but then we have a value, 0 to 9 for a flat, 10 to 30 for a satin, all the way up to 70 to 100. But you'll also notice this right here, and this is something that I'm going to talk a lot about. It's haze. Haze, less than a value of less than 10. The reason why that's so important, and I'll talk about it a lot more, is haze is really, in my opinion, who's bought a diamond here? Diamond ring, necklace, everybody raise their hand, come on. So what diamonds cost a lot?
clarity.
The ones that have the least amount of what? Exactly. The least amount of imperfections and the least amount of inclusions. Now, we're not talking about the same thing, but we're talking about very similar things. It's the inclusions and the imperfections that exist in the floor that are eventually what break down over time and make the floor look less glossy and have less shine. So, using RA, haze, and DOI to guide the process. So, this is a really cool chart, guys. And again, you know, I've been doing HEC Superfloor for probably 11 years. It isn't the only way to get to an end result, but they had it figured out a long time ago. The difference is they now have put measurements to it, right? I cannot deny that having a measurable outcome or where I'm at in the process is ultimately gonna give me the best result. So what you'll see is you'll notice that all the way up here, so right about here, it's a 25 grit. This is a 40 grit, 80, 100, 2, 4, 8, 15, 3000. And I know you can't read this because it's kind of fuzzy, but once we get to the 400 step here, we actually start getting into our RA, our DOI, and our haze values. So what's interesting with that is that now when I go in and I start my polishing steps, even if I'm not on my polishing steps, say I'm running a 40 grit, and I want to know when the right time to go to an 80 grit is, I can look at the floor, and we just got to skip to the next step. We now have, it's not a definitive way to measure a floor, but it is a way to give us a general idea of where we're at in the process. So once we start getting into our polishing steps, if I have an owner who, go back to the screen, the last slide, wants a measurable outcome of a DOI of 70, I know that I need to go about to a 1500, but now when I get to a 1500 grit step, I can measure the floor and I can actually understand, am I giving that owner that outcome, or am I just running a 1500 grit and that is what I think it should be? So using RA, which we have an RA meter, which we're going to use out here, guides the operator. I mean, guys, what better way to bring in a new guy who doesn't know the floors the way that we know? We've been doing it for years and years and years. And we're able to give him a guide to say, okay, when you're at an RA reading of X, it's time to move to the next step. It's just it's another way to guide the process. It is the why behind why we're using the diamond tooling steps that we're using. So rather than just saying, well, the sheet that I said run 40s and 80s and 100s, well, we're actually understanding, well, why are we doing that? What's the reason why we're doing that? And it produces an outcome that can be measured and quantified for the client or owner. What better way can you deliver an outcome to an owner than to take a scientific measurement device and take measurements of a floor and know without a shadow of a doubt that that's the product that you gave them? There isn't any other way to do that. So, not that kind of haze. I thought this was pretty funny. I was hoping to get a better reaction. Haze is the cloudy or milky appearance you see in reflected images. So, who likes having a clean car? Everybody likes having a clean car. What happens when you take your car through the car wash over and over and over again? It's clean, but what do you start seeing? Little scratches, little blooms, right? That's haze, okay? Haze are the micro scratches or blooming that occur in an instance of a car. That's a small amount of haze. But haze and polished concrete are like the tiny potholes in a road. Over time, those potholes grow and grow and grow until eventually your entire horse and carriage fall in like the streets of Seattle in the 1800s. And I love the Seattle Underground tour. So if those of you who have done that, you know that there were entire horses and carriages that fell into the giant potholes that were filled with sawdust. It's a little extreme example, but that's literally what it is. It's literally, you take something that's this big and you fill it with dirt and you walk on it and it grows and it grows and it grows and it grows. So why are there owners that have polished concrete floors that after a year they don't look very good? It's because the guard wore off and now we see a very unrefined floor that has a very high haze value, which are millions of little imperfections that we didn't fill in from the process. You recognize this guy? I do know my way around the trowel. In this picture, you can't really see it. This is ungrouted here, and this is grouted. So if you were to see this picture in a little clearer of a format, you would see that there's a monumental difference. But if I were to measure just the gloss of this using a 60-degree gloss, this would probably be acceptable. But I can guarantee that over time, running an auto scrubber, I'm leaving dirt behind, I'm walking on it. I've got wheeled cart traffic like in a grocery store. That's gonna break down, it's not gonna look very good in a short amount of time. So, that's pretty much it. Education, it's about outcomes. So, when we go outside, we're gonna try to put to use kind of all of these things. But again, my goal and my job is to educate. I sell the grinders, I sell the vacuums, I sell a lot of this stuff. I'm not here to tell you which one's right and which one's wrong. I'm here to educate so that we all are producing measurable outcomes so that we can promote the betterment of this industry and continue getting polished concrete spec'd and all of the projects that we've seen great success and growth in downtown and in the Puget Sound in general. So, who's got questions?